ordering food delivery feels a lot more luxurious than it used to. Not because the food's gotten any better or the experience or anything really. It's just all gotten a lot more expensive. I put this order together on a delivery app and it came out to $36 with tip. But I'm a consistent guy. I usually order the same thing when I get Chinese food. So I went to my email and looked through some old receipts and saw that in 2019, the same exact order was only $19.27, $26 with inflation. We all know that ordering on the app has made things more expensive. But why? Look at all these fees. Service fee, okay, that makes sense. They're providing a service. Delivery, but then what's delivery fee? And this one irks me the most, the New York courier fee, which Uber defines as offsetting new minimum wage laws. Minimum wage laws that the companies that make these apps lobbied to kill. It's almost like they're hiding the real reasons costs are so inflated by blaming being forced to give their drivers living wages. The real culprits for making food delivery worse and more expensive are a handful of massive, billionaire-funded corporations.
And that is when it turns into the pile of shit. That is the final stage of shitification.
Bro, you know what it is? They're doing what a lot of corporations are doing nowadays, where it's like they sink their claws into you by providing a service and making it the most convenient. I call it the Amazon effect. Like, they provide the most convenient service to get everybody hooked on it, and then they just start hiking up the price. Netflix did that too.
And don't tell me I don't need to use these apps. Many restaurants no longer employ in-house delivery workers. And Uber and DoorDash have seized a duopoly on 96% of the on-demand food delivery business. They've used that market power to convince us that we needed them to replace a system that was actually working just fine. That scam has made them immensely profitable. Uber's delivery business made $1.5 billion last year. That's a 173% increase from the year before. And DoorDash pulls in a ludicrous 49% margin on delivery. It's middleman capitalism, where a transaction that used to look like this—
I'm gonna order us some pizza.
From where?
From Sal's.
Now looks like this. And food delivery is just one example of how billionaire middlemen are taking your money and giving you nothing in return. Do you remember these ads from when the early iPhones came out?
If you want to check snow conditions on the mountain, there's an app for that. If you want to check how many calories are in your lunch, there's an app for that. Yep, there's an app for just about anything.
That catchy slogan symbolized a promise. Whatever you need, there's an app for it. The examples in the ad were for things that were handy to have a new tool for. And the transactions were simple. Either the apps cost $1 or a couple of bucks, other than the infamous I'm Rich app, which—
oh my god, I miss that so much. When apps just had the prices straight up and you didn't have to buy a subscription. Oh my god. This was the best time of smartphones.
Cost $1 or a couple of bucks, other than the infamous I'm Rich app, which cost $1,000 and did nothing, or charged some subscription fee. But importantly, most of what the apps did just existed on your phone. Existing web retailers like Amazon slowly began introducing apps, but there weren't many apps that provided real-life services for money. Even up through the early 2000s, food delivery was still the domain of Chinese, pizza, and diners. Restaurants saw delivery as an extra table, like as if the delivery guy were just another waiter getting paid a wage plus tips. And a lot of restaurants didn't offer delivery because it simply wasn't economical. Seamless Web, a company that originally just placed large restaurant orders for workplaces, pivoted to individual customers and became Seamless. And Grubhub launched with a bucket of venture capital money. These apps just connected users with the restaurant, who still used their own delivery guy. And Seamless and Grubhub charged the restaurants fees of 15 to 25% and let restaurants charge whatever they want for delivery.
You know, another thing that they're doing is they're squeezing the soul out of their delivery drivers. Because if you go on DoorDash right now, they'll show you restaurants that are 10 miles away from you. And it's just a person should not have to, like, you shouldn't have that option. You shouldn't be able to force somebody to drive 10 miles to go pick up your food for you.
Restaurants were pretty happy with this deal because of the volume, so it made it worth it to have a full-time delivery guy. And customers were happy because they had access to a whole new range of restaurants. In 2008 and 2009, a few tech millionaires came together with an idea. An app that would let you order a fancy black car at the push of a button. They named it Uber. To understand the kind of guy behind this, the idea was allegedly inspired by Uber co-founder Garrett Camp spending $800 on a private car to go out on New Year's Eve and finding that far too expensive. To understand the kind of guy the other co-founder, Travis Kalanick, is, here's a clip of him talking about how great Camp is.
When you open up that app and you get that experience of like, I pushed a frickin' button and a car showed up, and now I'm a pimp. Garrett is the guy who invented that shit.
Kalanick.
But that, like, that has, like, what about the person driving the car? Like, that seems like a very dehumanizing statement towards the person driving the car.
Kalanick's old Twitter avatar was the cover of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged because he, quote, likes architecture. But everyone knows that's not what people read Ayn Rand for. That's like watching The Sopranos because you like pasta.
45 seconds, stir it up real nice.
At the same event as the pimp quote, about 2 years after the launch of Uber, Kalanick made their goal clear: to dominate and replace public and shared transportation.
Uber would not be where it is today if it weren't for a very special entity, the SFMTA.
That's the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency. Uber started as an SF exclusive, providing black cars that cost around 1.5 times a normal cab. In the next few years, Uber saw a ton of investment from venture capital funds and traditional investors. This huge influx of cash allowed them to do a simple trick: make Uber rides really cheap. Do you remember that, when an Uber was cheaper than a cab? The cheap cars let Uber dominate the market. Drivers from small taxi companies started Ubering because it's where all the customers were, and at the time, the wages were good. Riders started defaulting to Uber rather than trying to hail a cab or even take public transit, and everyone had the app on their phone. Uber had seized the market, and they had their eyes on another market: food delivery in 2014. But it doesn't make any business sense. The rides were cheaper than it possibly could cost to pay the drivers, cover other expenses, and still make a profit. How does any of this work? What's the business model? Cory Doctorow has a word for it.
Shittification is a theory I came up with to describe how platforms decay.
By platform, he means web platform. But this goes beyond the internet into real life. It's a three-phase process.
Phase one,
I'm
the
stealing
platform
that word.
is good to its end users. The users pile in, they get locked in.
Think of Google or Facebook, platforms that started off free and were actually pretty good tools. Tools that slowly became nearly mandatory in modern life.
Phase two, confident that those users are locked in and aren't going to go anywhere. It makes things worse for those end users, and it gives treats to business customers.
So for Facebook or Google, that's when you realize that since you weren't paying for anything, you were the product being sold. And they both gave you up to data collectors and advertisers, knowing full well you'd made the platforms an essential part of your life.
There's lots of different technical tricks to lock in users. Like if you're Uber, you can drive all the taxis out of business and cause disinvestment in public transit. If you're Amazon, you can lock people in by getting them to pre-commit to buying a year's worth of shipping in advance with Prime.
Then comes phase three.
Once those business customers are also locked in, it takes away all that surplus and it gives it to itself.
Let's apply that to Uber. They made Uber easy to use, cheap, and readily available. Then started to pay drivers less and overwork them. And now they're finally starting to bring in money. At that time, the vast majority of food orders were still normal orders placed over the phone. Remember that? You'd call the actual pizzeria or Chinese place or whatever, and a guy who worked there would bring you your food. You'd pay him for the food, tip him, and no billionaire middleman was involved. It made sense. But the delivery companies decided to destroy that. Seamless and Grubhub told restaurants their menu prices had to be the same online and in store, so the restaurants couldn't make customers absorb the commission, but also making it so the customer thought delivery apps were cost effective. eliminating whatever competitive advantage that direct ordering had. Then they made a real mob-like move. They bought up domain names of restaurants they did business with so that those restaurants couldn't get their own business online, basically forcing any restaurant that wanted to get business via people Googling them to work with Grubhub.
That should be illegal.
Then came the new delivery thing, what we're really talking about here. Uber Eats and DoorDash. Grubhub was restaurants using their own drivers, but Uber Eats and DoorDash were something new. They had their own gig workers, contractors with no benefits, responsible for their own vehicles, fuel, insurance.
Slaves.
Going to the restaurants, picking up the orders, and delivering them to customers. And Uber Eats had the power of scale. Everyone had Uber on their phones already. And they just applied the strategy they did originally with cars, making everything impossibly cheap.
They had this surplus, right? They had a ton of money from the capital markets, and they gave it to us, people who wanted to eat dinner. They heavily discounted the food that we got. They paid the restaurants full price, but they charged us less than they were paying. Well, that's a pretty good deal, right? And if that's all they ever did, hell, I'm all for it, right? Let Peter Thiel buy me dinner every night from now until the end of time.
They wanted you hooked, so when they raised prices, you'd keep using their service. Once they'd used their venture capital cash to gain market share, they jacked up prices. Now, most people go to Uber or DoorDash first if they want to order food, meaning restaurants are beholden to the apps too, otherwise no one will order from them. Uber charges restaurants huge fees to be listed on the app, and it's a tiered service, so the more the restaurant pays, the better visibility they have on the app. Meaning when you search Thai food, the top results aren't the highest rated, closest, or anything like that. They're who pays the most. And Uber pushes this marketing service on all of the restaurants, meaning if every Thai restaurant buys the same tier, it becomes meaningless. They're all equal no matter how much they pay. The only entity that wins is Uber Eats.
Everybody gets screwed by the platform in the two-sided market.
And unlike Seamless and Grubhub, menu prices on Uber Eats are often higher in-app than direct from the restaurant, because Uber Eats encourages this to restaurants to offset fees. They openly recommend it. Generally, a middleman, like a distributor, only makes money once. They buy something and sell it to someone else for a profit. Uber Eats makes money off the restaurant and on the exorbitant fees they charge customers. I went through my email and found an old Seamless receipt from 2019. And I made the same exact order on Uber Eats, except the restaurant weirdly doesn't have chicken fried rice anymore, so I just got egg fried rice. Pre-chicken, if you will. It came out to 33% more than it did in 2019, and that's accounting for inflation. Then there's this story about a woman in Seattle getting a single coffee delivered for $25. Yeah, there's a lot of absurdity in that sentence, from the price to the very act of getting a single cup of coffee delivered. This especially bothered me because this was in an article alleging that the high fees were entirely due to new laws in Seattle ensuring delivery workers a fair wage. But it makes sense customers would blame the minimum wage. The delivery apps tell you to. Seattle customers, like New York customers, see regulatory fees for operating expenses, often explicitly blaming requirements put in place to guarantee a minimum hourly pay. The apps could just roll these costs into the existing fees and never tell us what it's for, but they want you to blame the wage laws. In Seattle, the $25 coffee article came during a debate to roll back minimum wage protections. That's a clear attempt by Uber and DoorDash to affect public opinion on the law. Imagine the app had an executive pay fee or a shareholder dividends fee, explaining the real reason you had to pay an extra $6 was to directly hand it to a venture capital billionaire who just really wanted it. I posted this line about the $25 coffee on Twitter without thinking too much about it, dunking on the customer for being upset about the price. It's an easy villain to paint, a lazy, privileged person complaining that the servant she hired to bring her a single coffee is making too much money. But she's not really the villain. In the greater class battle, she's on the same side as the driver against the venture capital billionaires. It's almost a meme, the guilt you feel when you order Uber Eats when you see all the fees attached. But it's okay to want convenience. Corey was adamant about this after I joked about the $25 coffee on our call.
There's nothing wrong with wanting something that's more convenient, right? Like, I don't think it's a sin to not want to spend your money, and I don't think it's a sin to not want to have to work extra hard to get through your day.
Yeah, like you should be able to order delivery occasionally. It shouldn't cost $40 if you want like a snack from Starbucks.
The problem is that there's like a false promise and that false promise then uses investor capital to crowd out the actual viable systems.
People expect convenience today because Silicon Valley billionaires created a false promise of a more convenient world that is affordable. But really, they just set up a system to funnel more of your money to themselves. Innovation is good, and it's okay to make money off of innovation. But what these people are doing is finding parts of everyday life that are working just fine and forcing themselves in as middlemen to transfer even greater wealth to themselves. They did it to dating. The rise of dating apps made it harder to meet people in person because the apps became the new status quo.
How do they make money off of dating apps? I'm so curious. Like, how does Tinder make money?
And now most of these apps charge exorbitant fees to be useful at all. And they're doing it to healthcare, like those bogus telehealth companies where the founders end up in prison. Or these networks that do nothing but connect you to doctors to rip off you and your insurance provider. Or this doctor in a box. Or streaming apps where access to content is easy but prices keep going up and creator wages keep going down. Or meditation and prayer apps that are basically adding a middleman to you just sitting quietly and thinking. They want you to pay to access your own mind. We've built a supposedly utopian tech economy around the same issues that plagued all of previous industry.
I had a homeboy back in Michigan who he needed an EpiPen because he would have these like allergic reactions, and like the EpiPen would save his life, and they hiked the price of that thing up, and that is so evil. Like this is something that a person needs to live, and you're taking advantage of that from like a capitalist standpoint. Crazy.
The Apple II Plus went on shelves the year Ronald Reagan hit the campaign trail for his first presidential run, right? These are two factors that have grown up at the same time. So all of the policies that define neoliberalism, weak labor protection, weak antitrust protection, and so on, get more extreme as tech gets bigger. The capital markets did not open the sluice gates to funding them until it became clear that you can cheat the labor laws by saying it's not a labor violation, we did it with an app. You can cheat privacy and say it's not a privacy violation, we did it with an app. You can cheat consumer rights and say it's not a rip-off, it's not a bait and switch, we did it with an app.
And what are they really even providing? It comes down to two things: supposedly innovative technology and scale. But now that innovation is broadly available, anyone could build a simple app like Uber's or DoorDash's, so it's just about scale. It doesn't have to be this way. Without us, from which the venture capital billionaires derive value, they have nothing. Order directly from restaurants that will let you. Get pickup from the ones that won't. Support worker power movements like Los Deliveristas Unidos, the New York-based collective of delivery drivers working to seize back power from the venture capitalists. Encourage the government to fight app monopolies like Lena Khan's FTC. And don't believe the apps when they try to turn us against each other. When you see a driver minimum wage fee, don't blame the driver. Blame the executives and venture capitalists whose fees show up nowhere on your receipt. Thank you so much for watching.
This was a great video. Very, very important video. I think it comes down to people having enough money to manipulate the market. They're going to see a market, right? A niche market of some sort. They're going to take the market share by providing the service in a more cost-efficient way or a more effective way. It's going to look like the better option, and then they're just going to slowly increase the prices. Like, that's just a classic bait and switch. That's what Netflix is. That's what Uber is. That's what DoorDash is. Amazon. You remember when Amazon used to be, like, everything used to be 2-day delivery on Amazon. Now it's literally just like they just get you your stuff whenever. I remember a time when Amazon was strictly 2 days. If you ordered it 2 days, they would get it to you in 2 days. Now, you order something from Amazon, it just comes whenever. Even if it says 2 days on there and you click, okay, this is going to come in 2 days, it'll still come whenever. And that's because they don't offer the same incentives for the drivers anymore. I remember I actually used to drive for Amazon at one point, and I was hired by Amazon. And then that summer, this was 2019, that exact summer, they outsourced the vans to like smaller like businesses. So I was driving for Amazon at first, and then I had to like pick a actual like a fleet to drive for instead of Amazon. So Amazon would hire fleets, and then you would work for one of the fleets, and the people who operated the fleets gave you no benefits. And they just did this just out of the blue one summer. And then that's when I stopped working for them. But yeah, I also think that there's an unseparable correlation between late stage capitalism and moral bankruptcy. Like, there's so few opportunities in late stage capitalism that morality goes out the window, because you have to sacrifice something just due to the fact of how few opportunities are actually out there. So people look at morality and they're like, who needs this? Let's just throw that out of there, and then look how much money we can make when we throw that out. So that's what I think. There was a really, really, really important point made during this video where one of the guys said, you shouldn't feel bad for convenience, because a lot of people will see this and be like, people are so lazy. Why do you even use these apps? Get up and go get your food, you lazy sack of ish. And it's like, no, you should be able to order delivery. Like, that's not the solution. Like, that's not the right mindset. Like, you should be able to order delivery. You're not some kind of bad person for ordering delivery. Like, you should be able to do that. It doesn't make you lazy for wanting delivery. That's one problem that I see that we really have as a society, is that we are way too quick to take the piss from each other before we take the piss from the people who are actually causing the problems. We're much quicker to say, like, oh, you just have to cook your own food and get your own food at home. It's easy. Why can't y'all do that? That's the reason why this is happening. It's like, no, it's because they hijacked something that was already working, right? So we have this framework in our brain that delivery is something we can get. We have that in our brain already. And then they hijack that and then make it suck. The solution is not to just cook at home. The solution is to take it back. All right, y'all. So that is the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought about this topic. Also, leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more of this type of content. That's all I got for now. I'm out.